We're live, according to this.
I'm going to be munching for a while. So you don't mind.
Pardon?
I'll be munching.
Oh, okay. All right. I apologize to our listeners around the world. This is our first live broadcast from Sammy's Italian Pizza Kitchen. And Sammy just installed Wi-Fi recently. So that's why we didn't do it before this. But in any case, here we are. And I'm unsure that we'll be able to see your chats. I hope so. Um, but we're going to proceed. So, Bill,
No, don't pull me in.
don't pull you in. No, I want to pull you in because I wanted to. Well, the first question I wanted to ask was, okay, we've now been doing this for over 2 years. It started in June of 2016, and here we are in September of 2018, and we're still talking to one another. And so the question I wanted to ask was, what have you gotten out of this at all? I'm just curious. Either one of you.
Well, I've gotten the conversation. I didn't really come here so much to harvest any information.
Hi, Dan.
I came here
No,
so
I'm talking to Dan in the in the screen here.
I came to have conversation.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't think I'm not looking for a textbook or a stream of information that's going to inform me of anything. I just want to, in the conversation, I learn stuff, and it's acts as a springboard, sends me off thinking and doing other things. So I wasn't really here as to learn Jung so much as to experience Jung, and yeah, like I say, in conversation, and also I wasn't expecting to be on your thing, so I didn't really.
Well, I mean, it's best if it's
It might be for
impromptu.
you, but not for me. It's not.
And
I'm
for-
too introverted for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. My vocabulary is just falling out from under me.
Fair enough. Okay. So, Des, how about you?
And if he's an introvert, then
You're a super introvert.
I'm under the table. I would say, I guess the camaraderie of just learning a topic and discussing with other people. And, I mean, like you said, kind of it sparks me in a way to have the conversation, discuss the ideas, and then
Interestingly, a couple weeks back, one of our regular followers here, and I'm sorry if I've missed your chats here, but one of our regular followers here suggested that I watch a series called Lodge 49. And Lodge, huh?
I don't know if that.
Okay, well, Lodge 40, it's a television series. They've made apparently 10 episodes so far that I can see. It's an extremely quirky show, but it's about a secret lodge in Hawaii, happens to be in Hawaii, that teaches people. Apparently, I've only watched two episodes so far, but teaches people about alchemy and the secrets of alchemy. So it works something like the Masons, and it has levels of membership and secret societies and so on. But it's extremely quirky. It begins with and Thomas, if you're listening, I'm talking about Lodge 49. But anyway, it's extremely quirky. It has a blonde, bearded young surfer who drives around in an open yellow Jeep, and he's obviously totally lost in his life. His father had a pool shop, I guess, where he they serviced swimming pools and such, and the house was foreclosed. And so one of the quirky things that happens in the first show is that he turns on the light in the pool late at night and goes and jumps into the pool. And of course, it belongs to somebody who's bought out of foreclosure. Very angry with him. The guy uses a pool net to get it over his head and pull. And so, anyway, he's seriously lost. I hope everybody can hear all right. If you can't hear, please say so. I'm not looking at all the chats. I can see some chats as they come up. But if I'm not staring at the screen, it goes away. So anyway, he just by a synchronicity he finds a ring with a lion on it, right? And it's a sort of a Gnostic style lion. Now that's CNN trying to tell me something. I don't care about CNN for this 2 hours.
So,
So anyway, finds a ring, and then by synchronicity ends up in front of this building that says it's Lodge 49, and it has the same symbol. So he knocks on the door, and the caretaker is there. The caretaker happens to be a guy who thinks he's about to be promoted to the top level in this lodge after many years. And so he invites him in, except that guy is being chased by some bill collector, okay? And a very nasty bill collector, as you might guess, and he owes him $2,000. So the surfer guy says to the caretaker, well, how much does it cost to join? And he says, $2,000. So through hook and crook, the surfer guy comes up with 2,000 cash and comes and gives it to him, and the caretaker is now out of trouble. Okay, but basically everybody is in some way broken, okay, by life. But together in this lodge, and it's men and women both, they alchemically heal themselves, I suspect. I mean, actually, I kidded to Thomas, who's might be on this call tonight, that after watching the first two, I was hoping that it was going to get to something that really told me what they were doing with alchemy before 1700 years passed. Because you have to be patient to see how this thing works. But my sense of how it works, and Thomas can correct me if I'm wrong, my sense of how it works is that the alchemy is really the people being together, and the people kind of being broken by life, but together they're finding something together. It's they can't put their finger on it really, I guess, but they all come and there's a bartender, they have a tap and so on, and they have cute outfits that they wear. Not all the time, but at some of the meetings, and so it's very interesting. And anyway, this is Lodge 49, right? So the one guy thinks he's going to succeed the leader of Lodge 49, but he has to get approval from Lodge number 1. Okay, and Lodge number 1 is in London. So he places a call to London to Lodge number 1, and the place is empty. There's this old old guy there, and he says, "Well, I want to get somebody to come to approve me because I'm going to be the new whatever top guy in the lodge." And yeah, so anyway, it gets to be it it kind of grows on you. Debbie watched the first episode and she says, well, they got to get to the point here sometime soon. The second one, okay, it's getting a little bit there, but we haven't had anything about alchemy yet. Just panning by a few alchemical symbols on the walls.
Well, maybe we should start over again. I mean, rebrand ourselves, and we'll be Lodge 121.
Lodge, what number?
121.
121. Why did you select that number?
Well, that was 7 squared, and I figured the next number would be 11 squared.
7 squared what? So 7 and
49.
Yeah, so
11 squared is 121.
oh, 11 squared. Okay, so it's 7 come 11.
Well, no. Seven's is historically a significant number, and 11 is also a significant number.
Right.
You know.
Right. 11 becomes 2, and 2 means the opposite, so 2 becomes 3. Right?
Hey, I'm not a Hegelian.
No, I'm talking about the what is it called, I don't know, some saying of Maria, who was a famous alchemist in the 3rd century or something like that.
Oh, okay. No,
You remember that?
no, I don't remember. I'm not. I don't have a strong background in alchemy. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, what am I getting out of it? I think it's somewhat like that. It's helping me get through the day. And I read this book, Ann Ulanov, who's professor of psychiatry and religion at Union Theological Seminary. So she's emerita professor of psychiatry and religion at Union Theological Seminary. What a combination! What a mouthful of right.
Your Honor.
Right. And so I heard her talk, and I had made available to you an audio that I made of her talk, where she was talking about the psychoid layer, and then I got her book and was listening or reading that book. And so she was talking about psychic healing, and the reason that I'm getting more interested in this divine drama business is because I'm more and more convinced that religions are not spontaneously evolved systems of psychic healing or mental hygiene. That that basically they filled the role that psychologists and psychiatrists have filled or started to fill in the 20th century, not completely, obviously, because we still have lots of religions around, but that basically they're all in the same business, which is mental hygiene.
Yeah, I wouldn't. The word hygiene would bother me because
Why?
hygiene. Well, because it sounds yeah, sounds so antiseptic.
How about mental health?
Yeah, well, hygiene is sort of like, you know, when I was in the military and I had to see a psychiatrist, they didn't give a squat about me. They just wanted to, if I had been on the front lines, they were just concerned about getting me back to the front lines. So they didn't care about my hygiene. For them was, can you take orders and will you die for your country? So, that wasn't exactly self-actualization.
Right.
And that's what hygiene makes me think of. Also, Anne Ulanoff, she, have you ever, I know you said you heard it, they had a Red Book conference at the library in D.C. A few years ago.
Right.
And I thought her talk was the most profound of all of the talks of all those people who spoke.
You thought hers was?
Yeah, I thought she was very good.
I don't remember watching her, so I'm going to have to go back and look at that because that was.
That's when I got I had read her before years ago, but she really struck me as a very sharp gal.
Yeah, she's written a lot of books, like 16 or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Easy.
But anyway, it just happened that her voice in that recording came up on my car today. So
Listen to that.
Listening to that
Video.
again today.
Because I listened to it like 3 or 4 times. I went, whoa.
Listen to what?
The video.
Her video.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about a presentation that was done at the Library of
Jefferson
Congress
Library. What's that library?
in 2010, and
Anyway, they had a big conference there.
it was
4 years ago or something.
Sonu Shamdasani. Hi, Malice. It was Sonu Shamdasani, James Hillman, Anne Ulanoff, and I think it was the daughter of Richard Tarnas in the same Library of Congress. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The attractive dark-haired woman was Tarnas's
I
daughter.
didn't see the whole thing. I just
Okay.
went and picked and
All right, because it was like a 2-day conference that was conducted at the Library of Congress. It's all on YouTube if you want to see it. It was done in 2010, and it was when the Red Book was just newly published. And so I enjoyed all those talks very much, but honestly, I don't remember seeing Ulanoff, so I'll have to go back and watch that now. And so we're talking about Professor, let's see, library,
You'll just have to wait and see what they say.
Yes, Miles, I did recommend Women Who Run with the Wolves. Not Women Who Dance with the Wolves, Women Who Run with the Wolves. So we're talking about Professor Anne Ulanoff, who was Emerita Professor of Psychiatry and Religion at Union Theological Seminary. I have a lot of unions in my life because there's a union college which happens to be a traditional competitor with Hamilton College where I went, and so and then there's and then I have my ankle replaced at Union Memorial Hospital. So
And your grandfather fought in the Union, did he?
well, one of my ancestors did fight for the Union. It's true. Yeah.
Great, great, great.
In fact, there were, believe it or not, I mean, you may find this hard to believe, but if you go to Boston and you go aboard the USS Constitution, and they have a big tablet that they sometimes put out, which has a list of all the captains of the USS Constitution. And the very last one before the USS Constitution was taken out of official service, although it's still the flagship of the Navy, but it really hasn't been doing much since 1859. But from 1857 to 1859, the captain was Commodore Thomas Conover. And Commodore Thomas Conover was a member of the first class of the U.S. Naval Academy. And so we have a long family tradition about the Naval Academy. But anyway,
Well, they had to get somebody on there. So it was a Commodore.
I guess, yeah. Hard-headed Dutch seaman, right? That's because that's what it was.
Oh, that's interesting little tidbit.
Yeah. And so I think he was still around for the Civil War, as a matter of fact. But anyway. So did you ever read Women Who Run with the Wolves? There's a discussion going on in chat here about Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Huh?
It's on the rotation, ready to go.
It is, but you haven't read it yet. Okay. You were commenting a couple of years back that you would come to these sessions and then your mind would be spinning afterward and you'd have a hard. Yeah. Well, Women Who Run with the Wolves is like that.
Oh, great. Warning.
In fact, it caused me to write my novel, so I can definitely say that it's like that.
Yeah, it's got a little Surgeon General warning on it.
Yeah. Well.
I could use a spark right now, so I'll dig into it.
Yeah. Well. The Surgeon General warning for all people who are watching this YouTube channel is that anybody who starts digging into the archetypal material can have things that are kind of overwhelming come up from the unconscious. And, you need a large enough ego to handle it. And when it happened to me with Women Who Run with the Wolves, I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought that I was just having this incredible creative moment which lasted 8 months, and I thought, okay, this is what happens to novelists, and I think it is. Do you agree with that, Bill? I mean, it's something that comes in a rush, and Deb has been talking about it in the last couple of weeks, in fact.
Not for me. I mean,
Not for you.
The rush for me has been a few years. It's only now though getting to where it's starting to draw me along. I'm not, where it's getting compelling. So I can't say. It's not like, it's not like writing a poem. A poem I can see as a rush, or capturing a dream and writing it down. But
Right.
a novel to me, because I'm so methodical, requires a lot of preliminary setup. So.
Okay, so you approach it as a logos kind of a guy. You need some structure to it before you get
Well,
into
it depends. I found out when I was an undergraduate that I can write 20 pages without any scaffolding. But after 20 pages, I have to start building scaffolding.
I see.
And so, but once the scaffolding's built, then I have rushes within each partition.
Right.
That's just, even when I paint, anything I do, I work that way.
Okay. All right. In my case,
Just me though.
it basically came in in a flow that went for 8 months, and then it was over. I mean, it didn't. I couldn't stop it because there were these psychogenic figures that were, well, especially one psychogenic figure that kept waking me up every morning, telling me to get to work. She was nice about it, but
That was my wife. I mean, no, she wasn't nice at all.
well, she was a nice, young, polite Japanese woman, about between 15 and 18 years old, but she woke me up every morning and made me write 500 to 1,000 words. And then I could go on with the rest of my day, but I had to do that much. And that kept going until I had told the whole story. So it was obviously an archetypal story. And it was an archetypal story that came out in a structure. It was a structure because it was a structure that is in that book. Okay, the story is called Vasilisa the Wise, and I think it starts at something like page 94 of the hardbound book. But it's not that the story that itself is so important, but rather Dr. Estes's discussion of the awakening of intuition in women, the process of awakening intuition in women. And what she describes, and she's a psychologist in Colorado, a very famous one, what she describes is 9 steps that women go through in order to become mature women. And so, since I was going to write a novel about the first woman prime minister of Japan, I thought I'd try using her structure. And so basically I was reading like a page or two about each step, and then out from my psyche was coming this flow of stuff that was sort of on that general idea, but with this Japanese patina on it, which was based on my experience in Japan. And so I just thought that it was sort of the creative aspect of what famous writers talk about losing when they have writer's block. That, my interpretation of it at the time was that, oh, this must be the creative spirit that happens to novelists, so I'm going to just ride with it, which is what I did. I didn't think of myself being crazy at the time. I just thought, I've hooked into some powerful thing that's allowing me to write this. And I got to the end of it, and it was over. And I said, wow, that was cool. But then I could definitely feel, let me see here. Ask your guess what. Let's see if I can get these up, because I'm sorry, these messages are just going by too fast, unfortunately. So the question was something like, ask your guests what Jungian life experiences they've had. Okay, so Jungian style life experiences, these psychogenic experiences. Like, I've described a few in this group, right? Well,
Is it like a Christian life experience?
Yeah, religious experience. You might see it as a religious
I never
experience.
associated it with Jung, but I don't know. Go ahead.
I would take that ball and answer. I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Well, have you ever had Have you ever had a religious experience, such as one of the experiences that I've described at this table over the last 2 years? For example, we caught one on video here in February of 2017, I think, when I was describing this experience at the Boston Museum of Art and saying that I hadn't been able to explain it, but this is what happened. And Bill just said these two words, and all of a sudden, bang, I got it. I completely understood what it was about. Right?
Bill, the Zen master.
The Zen master, absolutely. No, but I mean, I'd gone into the Boston Museum of Art. I was looking at this Jackson Pollock drip painting that had no image on it whatsoever. Okay, he prided himself in not putting an image into his images, right? And I walked into the room with the actual painting, right, which is about 20 feet wide and 10 feet high, and I just broke down in tears, and I couldn't stop. It was a waterworks, and I never understood why for 20 years. Okay, and I was describing that experience at this table one night, and Bill said olive drab, and all of a sudden, boom, I connected it up with the loss of my roommate in Vietnam, and so that's one.
See, I have those all the time.
Yeah, I have them all the time, very frequently
I
also.
mean, it's sort of like the big dream. Sometimes I have bigger versions of those experiences, but I mean, they happen so often. I don't.
So would you say it's like a synchronistic experience?
Wow, that's so technical. To me, they're just they're just revelations, synchronicity. I don't think in terms of what's going on the outside. I'm just experiencing what's going on the inside. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, even when I was 4 years old and I had my first, we can call it a religious experience, but didn't even know what religion was. I just had an experience, which later I said, oh, that sounds like a religious experience. But I could say that about every one of them. They're not.
Sure.
To give it a label is after the fact. You experience it, and then.
Right.
So I could say it was Jungian. I could say it was Zen. I could say it was.
Right.
So.
So something comes out of the psyche and works as a kind of revelation.
No.
It stays in the psyche. No, tell me.
I would say there's some sort of, if we're going to use the word psyche, I guess I would say, I was sort of being funny in that email I sent you where I said soul is being and spirit is becoming. So it was actually, I would probably say it was more spirit. So it was a spiritual experience. Because soul is sort of the given in my way of seeing the world, and that's sort of, which is psyche. So I think the given, I think it's, maybe I experienced the psyche, and because I have a memory of it, it became spiritual. How about that? Any Zen moments here?
Well, let's sum it up here for those of you that are wondering, as something like something comes out of the unconscious that you're not expecting, and it teaches you something. Okay, and what did I learn from that experience or the other ones that I've talked about in this group? Well, maybe not much, but on the other hand, it definitely tells me that synchronicity is real. But the point that I was going to make to you, Des, is that when you read a book when we discuss archetypal issues, or when you read a book like Women Who Run with the Wolves, it can spark, as you say, spark something that in your from your psyche, and we can't predict what it's going to be. I can't predict what it's going to be, and it would be wrong for me to even interpret it for you because I'm not a mental health professional. But something can come up, and it's for you to interpret, for each person to interpret. And so I definitely suggest you look at Vasilisa the Wise because, or that the discussion after Vasilisa the Wise, being a woman, it should resonate with you, I suppose. And you can say yes or no. I've been through these phases. As a man, maybe some part of my feminine side did resonate with it because I've often said that this novel is the autobiography of my anima up till that time, for that period of time. And
It's just a wild and crazy story.
huh?
It's a wild and crazy tale.
It is a wild and crazy
Yeah,
tale.
I mean, it's such great images to experience. I like that.
Right.
The Vasilisa. Yeah, the story.
The story of Vasilisa the Wise is a crazy story.
Yeah, you got a house on chicken legs. I mean,
Yeah.
these are images,
Right, these are serious images.
but they work.
But they work. And there's a witch. and there's a burning head or something like that, or a skull.
Yeah.
A skull with a fire in it. And
Oh yeah,
a few other things.
I haven't read it in over 10 years.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the chapter.
No. This is one of the stories in Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's in the book you have that's in your list that you should definitely pull out tonight.
To the top. Oh, you don't want to be asleep tonight.
Well, or read it in the morning when you want to get charged up.
That with my coffee, I'll be ready to go.
I recommend
Oh, my
a
goodness.
rainy weekend. Yeah, when you have nothing to do, sit down and start reading.
Okay, I'm sure I may have been missing some comments, so I'm going
Well, you're gonna
to
have a
look
rainy
here
weekend
for a
this
minute
one.
and see if I see anything come up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're very small on my iPhone, and I hope that was useful. Okay, so
Courtney used to do that. I mean,
Bill, I had one of these religious experiences a couple Saturdays ago, and I sent my experience out, and and 2 weeks ago, I actually read it into the group, and so the group online has heard it. I called it the Divine Drama. What?
it's like 10 pages long, right?
Yeah, it's 10 typewritten, 11 typewritten
Mine was
pages.
downloading. You said it came out all in
Yeah, it came out all in a piece from 5 in the morning, and I was handwriting it, and I transcribed it, and it's the way these things sometimes come, and if you're interested in putting your writing to use for something that you can do for fun, you know. Because this is what's happening to Deb too right now, because she's trying to write a novel, and not trying to, she's doing it. And her mother, who is an avid reader, is just completely gobsmacked about this. Is that the word, gobsmacked?
That works.
About about Deb's novel, but she's experiencing this flow that comes when this is activated. And in my case, because I know where it comes from, how it comes. Um, I feel I could turn that on anytime I want to, okay? And I don't need to fear writer's block because I know how it comes, right? Like this typewritten thing came, right? And so I know that if I do certain things, it will start to flow, and then it just keeps flowing. And I do a fair amount of writing lately, not for things I really want to be writing, but nonetheless, I'm writing. And normally, when I start to write, if I write, the first 2 or 3 lines typing, uh, it then just flows from my unconscious, and but it's a question of learning how to turn it on, and it's a question first of experiencing it and knowing what we're talking about because it is a kind of religious experience. I mean, it's something way beyond what an ancient could have understood. An ancient like Jacob or Job or one of those people who were having these dreams or visions. And, in the Bible, they're described as dreams or visions, right? So that's what they were having. And, I never really understood it, when they were talking about Job and God coming down and, Yahweh coming down and doing this stuff. I think, brought up in the church, I always thought, okay, this is God, or where the heck is he, type thing. But that's not what it is. It's a dream or a vision, and even Revelation, which scares the bejesus out of most people. Most people don't even want to read it, but really, it's just a very wild dream that this guy John of Patmos had. And he was an ancient, so he didn't really know what was happening to him or what the dream was about. But he did what I did. He scribbled it down, and a huge writing came out of it over a period of time, and it became the last book in the Bible. And nobody could put it into context, I think, at that time. And that's why I'm talking about religions having developed as systems for mental health, like the spontaneous development of the confession in the Catholic Church, right? Jung once wrote this article called "It's the Priest or the Psychotherapist." Yeah. Both can forgive.
But this sort of thing, I do, but that's just for me, and I haven't really examined that.
Right.
But for me, what I do is I do that, and then I go back and edit.
Well, that's what, sure.
And it's the edited version that that
you later use.
that I resonate with.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But it comes out raw. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's also too sort of like active imagination where you're letting things. But there comes a point for me where I feel like I'm beginning to push it and it's not pulling me anymore, and that's when I stop.
yeah, okay. So, yeah, understood. So, do you recognize any experience like that in your lifetime? Does?
I have different things, but I don't know how I would connect them to the Jungian life experience. The only thing I can think of is like there's a rush. And would you experience with
Pardon?
Would you experience with what is it? Dances with Wolves.
Women who run with the
Yeah.
Oh,
I was telling Bill the Artist's Way with Julia Cameron.
What
And
was about that?
it's just she has a whole program you work through each week, and you take an artist day for yourself where you're just doing something that's just fun. And then every morning you write 3 pages, you sit down, it's just stream of consciousness, whatever's in there, you get it out. And it's amazing how it really clarifies. And I just remember doing that and it just feeling a rush after so many weeks. And suddenly, my mind was all over the place and ideas were coming and the clutter had gotten out. So if I could find time, I would. I had one of those pods where you store stuff that needed to be cluttered and uncluttered. So I guess that's the only thing I could think of where like creative. I've had other things, but I don't know how to connect them to. I'm thinking like mastermind groups where you get together and you state your intentions and things like that. And I had something happen that it's like manifesting. You're asking for something, and it came with literally a bang. I was in a car accident, and it changed my life trajectory in a good way. Painful for a bit, but
Tell me what happened in this experience. It was a mastermind experience.
it was a mastermind group, and I was actually leaving a meeting. I was in sales at the time, and I wanted to switch to writing, but wasn't quite ready to make the leap. How am I going to, I've written on the side, I've done freelancing, but how am I going to make the leap to a full-time? But you don't that's not the questions you ask. You just put the intention out, this is what I intend to do. And I had been gearing up for it, but still didn't see the other. Right. And I left that meeting, was going out on another sales call, and I was hit in the side by a van. And that was my second car accident in 1 year. And my doctor said, I recommend that you get a desk job because it's not safe for you anymore to be in sales, because I was hit twice in the same year, but it was...
Was it because you were distracted by thinking about something else?
No, I was hit from behind by somebody who shouldn't have been driving any longer, and I was hit in the side by somebody who was probably on their telephone. So I was the target both times. And then when I was recuperating the second time, I was online searching, found something, managed to drive up there with my stiff neck, interview, and get the position. And then so I would say that's, I don't know how you would tie that to anything, but the intention.
Things that happen to us that have to do with our psychological health. And
Well, I think too, when it's time to do something and you're hesitating, things will make you go ahead.
And I've since learned to be very careful what I ask for.
Yeah.
Because when it's
I
ready
wonder how
to
I'll change.
when it's ready to come, trust me, you're going to get pushed one way or the other.
Yeah.
You better be ready to make the leap.
Yeah, or else you go ahead and make the leap somehow. Yeah.
I remember calling from
That's
the
sort of
car
what
my
I'm doing
first
now.
call. Was it making a leap?
Yeah. Yeah, I've leaped out of the working world into my own world now. So.
Good. Very good.
Which is what I've been wanting to do for decades, but
I'm glad you
I had
didn't
a
have
family.
anything dire happen to you to make you.
Well, divorce.
Oh.
Well, I don't want to go down the
My
list.
apologies. Okay, that's a direction turn. You're right.
Yeah.
Think of that. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks.
so,
Yeah, I try to avoid the physical. How do I do that?
so what I would say is that what we're talking about also happens in spousal relationships, but there's something ineffable that you can't put your finger on, which is why after 27 months, believe it or not, this is the 94th meeting of the Carl Jung Depth Psychology Reading Group, and 94, and and the two of you were here for like the first 70, and then after I had my ankle replacement, I went online because a lot more people are showing up online.
It should have made it easier for us to attend, right?
If we could remember.
Right.
Well, I've actually been pretty
But
preoccupied.
Bill's not remembering whether it's Monday.
Is it trash day or not?
Our life revolves around trash.
Well, that's how heavy my schedule is. That's a good thing.
but but something happens that moves the furniture around. That's the way I used to talk about it when I was doing a lot of tarot readings for people. I would say, what it does. I can't tell you what it's going to do for you, but somehow it's going to move the furniture around in your psyche in such a way that something new will happen, right? And I can't predict whether that's good or bad. I can only say that, something will resonate. It may resonate unconsciously and cause something to happen unconsciously. It may never be unconscious, but you might want to come back and get another reading next week. And I'm sure a lot of tarot readers make a living doing that. I mean, I sort of, as you know, I know how to do it, but I have other things to spark my creativity, so I don't use that. But my guess, I have a sense about you that if yeah, you that if you read Women Who Run with the Wolves, it will spark something for you.
Okay,
That-
get ready.
Yeah, and my prediction is that it will be good. Okay. Okay.
Just don't drive that week.
Yeah, don't drive that. Okay.
It'll find you. I have a tree waiting for Gary to see it from my house, so maybe I'll see the others.
Maybe it shouldn't stay in this weekend.
Well, okay. So what was happening in my little divine drama here? And I'll apologize if this bores the online participants who heard this a couple weeks ago, but what this divine drama is something that's taking place in the collective unconscious of all of us, of all human beings. Okay, now for many millennia, we've been all separated, and so we've broken up into little enclaves and groups, and so we've developed in somewhat different ways around the world. But now we're getting back together, and all of a sudden, what Edinger talked about, what Edinger said in 1994, ultimately we're going to be all one thing, or we're going to be dead.
Both of those are the same.
Like spiritual death or physical.
I suppose it could be a kind of spiritual death in a way, but the collective unconscious is a real thing. Okay, so anyway, I started with asking a few questions, and these questions were questions that came to me at 5 a.m., so they woke me up. I said, okay, I get it. I've got to write these things down. So I started writing, and so this is the way it came, which are, why are religions right, correct, as in correct? And, and Jung says in paragraph 752 of Answer to Job, but religious statements without exception have to do with the reality of the psyche and not with the reality of the physis. So the criticism that's been levied at religions by the materialists and the scientific method guides is it's not real. And Jung says, well, it's not real because it's not in the physical world. It's in the psyche. It's in the unconscious. And that's where it's happening. And in the previous paragraph, he had said in 751, he says, what I can't get through these people's heads is I believe the psyche is real. And because if it weren't so, otherwise the uranium itself or the laboratory equipment would have made the atomic bomb, which they obviously didn't. So the human psyche had somehow taken those materials and turned them into this explosive power that can now destroy the human species. And so the point is that they're all psychic facts, therefore all true somewhere. Okay, so if you believe in the Virgin Mary or the assumption of Mary into heaven, as stated in Pope Pius's bull in 1950.
You want to hear Bill's bull?
It's all bull, right? There's no doubt. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just no explaining. But the point was that over 1,000 years at least, Catholics were praying the Rosary, and they were at least unconsciously looking for something in the unconscious that would soothe them. Okay, and obviously that's the feminine principle in one way. It's mother, and so on. So when you pray the Rosary, certainly for Catholics, and I can certainly see why that would be, even though I'm not a Catholic, it's very soothing. And okay, if we say healing or a way to deal with something. So in that sense, it's true, and it works. And the point is that religions work to solve our troubles, to heal our mental stuff. Angst, yeah. I mean, when you marry off your daughter, it's pretty anxious, but by the same token, the fact that the wedding ceremony is her husband taking her away, and this is all a drama that's played out through the marriage ceremony, then everybody accepts that now she's a member of the married woman's set, as opposed to the not married woman. The bride, including all the other suitors and everything.
Well,
The ritual resets everybody's mind.
I can follow that up to a point. I mean, in an ideal kind of way of thinking about it. But when you're buying indulgences and dealing with a corrupt and church, or dealing with the sexual predators.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to tell you that the Catholic Church is lily white here. There's definitely a shadow there lurking.
Yeah. Yep, big shadow. Okay, I can. I think you're right. I mean, I think the church has served that purpose, but I also think it's served itself more than anything. I mean, not everyone in there. I think there's some genuinely spiritual people involved. But when you've got a political structure within which those spiritual people exist, people are going to be corrupted.
Absolutely.
So there's
and the Reformed Church is doing that too. So.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I've always been skeptical. I've never felt a need for them. I thought spirituality was something personal. And,
which is why.
and like the Gnostics, you can, if you're extroverted, which I'm not, you can join together and share your spirituality.
Right.
But you don't really need a middleman.
You don't need a middle.
And
That's the point.
and the other thing is, you actually, I think the experience on spiritual people is far in, more enhanced. I think some people need permission to be spiritual, so maybe a church is good for that. But I think artists, for example, and people of that ilk don't really need permission to be spiritual.
Well, they're spiritual and they're
It's part of what you got to be.
right in order to do it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, they keep like Instagram keeps offering that. It's like making
But the problem is like Pollock, when you lose the connection somehow, then you go to spiritual, which is
Well, not necessarily, but you might just.
or drugs.
Well, some people do, not everybody. Or maybe you do for a while and then you snap out of it. I mean, there's,
Right.
you,
But my point is that if we understand it better, and I think I understand it a little better than I did in 1993 at least, if we understand it better, then it's easier to avoid having it turned off on you, the spiritual flow.
well, I don't think you can maintain a spiritual flow all the time because you got to eat, you got to
obviously.
sleep, you got to do some functional things. That's why you make like one day a week special. Let's call it Sunday. You know, and so that's your sacred day, and you do all the sacred things. And,
No distractions. That's
yeah,
way of not
and
working.
actually, it's kind of weird, but Sunday's always been like a big day for me because it's like there's so few disturbances on Sunday. Everybody goes off to church or somewhere and gets lost, you know, and I can wander around, and that's the way it used to be. It's not that way anymore, but
Right.
it was always sort of a special day. It felt like nobody would call me. That was good and stuff like that. And I could work on things.
Day of peace.
I could have my
Thomas-
sacred day, you know. My
Thomas
son.
says today is Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay. I don't know what to say to a Jewish person on Rosh Hashanah except Happy Rosh Hashanah, I guess.
Yeah.
Thomas knows.
Molotov.
So anyway, Thomas, we're having our own little lodge. What 121 here?
Yeah.
I think I googled it.
That's a
more or
4,
less.
which
Have a
is-
sweet New Year. Okay.
You know, 121
So,
is
right.
4.
Is what for?
4, which
Yeah.
is a complete, you know, it's, and,
right.
and Jung's always in quaternities.
We're just missing a fourth.
Right. So yeah. So Thomas says the Rosh Hashanah means Happy New Year. Or it's the New Year in the Jewish calendar, which I've been having some very interesting revelations because of doing the advanced group and doing the seminar on ion. And in there, Jung is talking about astrology and Nostradamus in the chapters that I'm reading lately, chapter 6 and 7. And it's very interesting because, you know, he's basically saying that we're unconsciously by all, let's say everybody reads a certain astrologer in the newspaper, and that astrologer is syndicated in 1,000 newspapers, let's suppose. Then everywhere in the country or the world, people are putting a little rut in their unconscious that says this about today, or whatever it is that that person says, right? And
It's like Mary Chapin Carpenter called it, your daily dose of destiny.
there you go, daily dose of destiny. So anyway, over thousands of years in the case of astrology, these things got more and more refined, and So they actually created expectations. So they created expectations in the context of the zodiac, and do I have the symbols here? I thought I had the symbols.
Symbols for what? The
Well,
signs or the planets or the,
Yeah, the planets.
Can we draw?
Do you know the signs?
Sure.
Oh, here it is. Okay, here's the signs. So here are the signs. So Jung had put these signs right in the middle of the text. So it's if you're not up on your zodiacal signs,
Been a while.
you can't even read this book because it's right in the middle of the text. If you don't know what
I don't know Greek, I don't know Latin, but I can read signs.
Okay. All right, so I'm talking about the symbols of astrology. To the extent that you need what I'm talking about. But Dr. Jung put that right in the middle of his book. And, but, the
Esoteric,
significance,
you know?
pardon? So the significance, he says, it's not that Nostradamus was so special in his prophecies, because everybody was expecting something to happen between 1789 and 1792 at the time of the French Revolution, right? And that was because there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Mercury, I think, at that time in Aries. I think it's Jupiter and Mercury in
That
Aries.
must happen. Jupiter goes around what, once every, is it?
No idea.
Jupiter every 12 years or so, but
Yeah, that's
but
gonna
the
happen a
issue
lot.
no, but the issue is when Jupiter and Mercury
Well, Mercury
come-
goes around like once a month or something.
right, but it's when you can see Jupiter and Mercury together and they're in a certain zodiacal sign at a certain time of the year, whatever it is. Okay, so it's a conjunction of Jupiter and Mercury from the point of view of astrologers. So these people have been saying this stuff for thousands of years, and nobody knows any better. Therefore, everybody sort of unconsciously somehow believes it, right? And so when everybody says that, okay, there's going to be this big conjunction, they don't agree on the year. It's either 1789 or 1792, but they're not sure which. And so something happened both times, right? So 1789 was the storming of the Bastille, and 1792 was the terror of when they started hacking off people's heads and stuff like that.
So Jung says this. He said that it's
Yeah,
because
yeah,
people think it that it became so.
Yeah,
It's
Wait, thought it into being, I mean? Like you set the
basic-
expectation, the intention in your head, and it
Well-
creates a self-fulfilling.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so that's basically what he's talking about here, is that Nostradamus, let's see where, I don't know if it's all summed up in one place here. I've read it online, so you can listen to it on the way home if you want. He says, the course of our religious history, as well as an essential part of our psychic development, could have been predicted more or less accurately, both as regards time and content, from the precession of the equinoxes through the constellation Pisces. The prediction, as we saw, was actually made and coincides with the fact that the church suffered a schism in the 16th century. After that, an enantiodromia process set in, which, in contrast to the Gothic strivings upward to the heights, could be described as a horizontal movement outwards, namely the voyages of discovery and the conquest of nature
and the Reformation,
and the Reformation.
because I mean that would be more horizontal than the discoveries.
Right, and so the vertical was cut across by the horizontal, and man's spiritual and moral development moved in a direction that grew more and more obviously anti-Christian, so that today we are confronted with the crisis of Western civilization, whose outcome appears to be exceedingly dubious. Okay, so anyway, goes on to discuss how Nostradamus got all these astrological points that everybody'd been talking about for 2,000 years or whatever it was, and then just predicted it out, and he was right.
Okay. Well, that part I knew about, but it almost sounds like I'm having trouble with the, instead of sounding like the collective unconscious made manifest these things that you associate with those planetary alignments. It almost sounds more like the collective consciousness, not unconscious. Because I mean,
Well,
not that
I mean,
I'm not
it was-
sure I buy into either one of them, but
I think it was both, because I think
I don't think most
unconscious-
people knew any of that stuff.
Well, most people didn't know any of that stuff, but the leaders did. And, most people were poor peasants who just did what they were told, more or less, right? But I think they didn't understand the significance of the unconscious impact on them.
Well, since nobody
Right.
called it the unconscious until Freud, right?
Yeah, I mean, but my point is that okay, it's conscious, and you think you have it under control, and in fact you don't. Okay, the self is in charge, not your ego, right? And so so I think people may have thought, going along that they had everything under
In fact, a
control.
lot of what we call the unconscious now, which we sort of collectively grouped everything together, was probably voices and visions to all, people prior to separating it out into
Absolutely.
ego unconscious.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so next question. Let's see what time have we got. Okay, 9:20. Why are all religions wrong? Okay, they all sold magic to early Iron Age men. So what they did was they didn't understand what was going on, so they explained it some way, which was basically magical. God in heaven, there's a heaven up there, whatever it was said. But what happened in the last 500 years is the scientific method says, no, it's proven untrue by science. But why are all religions right then again? That's asking the same question again. They are all organically developed as systems of mental health and all based on psychic facts, not physical facts, and they are true as such. Just because their myths don't hold water anymore in the physical world doesn't mean that they don't have value to society as a mystery.
I don't think they ever held water in the physical world anyway. I think it was just ways for people to experience you know how, well, you don't know. But in a hypnosis, they'll give people a structure. They'll give them a story, and they'll let people elaborate within that structure. And that's we've sort of been talking about that anyway. And in religion, we would do the same. And a person can plug in their own experiences because we all project anyway. We're projecting like crazy all the time. So if we have a sort of a framework within which to project, then you're going to go, yeah, you're right, man. That guy knows what he's talking about. He pointed to that star and it was true. But so I mean, it's really a matter of they were psychologists in a way, or hypnotists, or shaman.
They were that, and so then I asked the 6 questions of the reporter, which are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So who, they were shamans, medicine men, and priests. And what, they were interpreting spontaneously developed methods of mental health that became political tools. These
Well,
became political tools.
but I think it also may have the people who were more enlightened, people who were having experiences and became leaders simply because they were more spiritually attuned than the
Yeah.
others, and so they became leaders, the de facto leader, because they were actually ahead of them in some way. And that's going to, of course, be true with parents and children. But I mean, the parents also are going to have leaders because some people are more spiritually attuned. And
Precisely. Okay,
and
so
in that sense, you've got your mental health thing going on, I think. Yeah.
And so they would say, God wants X. So God wants a cathedral here. I had this conversation with an Orthodox Catholic priest one time, and he was talking about starting his prayer in central New Jersey. And he went out with like 3 or 4 people who wanted to be like the elders of this Orthodox Catholic Church, and he took some special coin that he had and he put it down on the ground and he said, God wants a church here. And sure enough, a church emerged there, it manifested. And but it manifested because it manifested through the spirit of those 4 or 5 people that were present at that time, and then they spread out. And then once you build a cathedral up behind yourself, then it's hard to say no to. You put a cathedral behind you and you put all these fancy
It's-
robes on and
it's
symbols that you're carrying.
And that's